Why astrology? Why are you studying astrology? Do you believe in astrology? I have, and I'm sure you have at one time, while looking into astrology, been asked that question. This is the first video in a series I'm creating on big questions in the power of astrology for healing and growth. Are you ready to learn why astrology is more powerful than your sun sign? Hello, fellow seekers. My name is Sarah Christensen, and this is my YouTube channel. I've decided to bring my astrology practice to the YouTube platform to expand my audience and to share some insights of how astrology can be used as a tool for self-awareness and healing, life planning, and mindfulness. I also hope to have some fun exercising my creativity putting these videos together. If you are new to astrology, you may have come to wonder why there's a pull to look closer. Astrology is absolutely an amazing tool for expanding awareness of yourself as if it were a big microscope, looking at you in all the little parts of yourself and the big parts of yourself, those that are your inner world, as well as that which you have expressed into the world. And it really is a great symbol, a language of symbols to help us discover who we are at a deeper level. And also from there, we can fine tune what we may be trying to have a breakthrough in something that we have reached a certain level and we want to have a breakthrough. But it's also an amazing tool for healing that I have found over the last decade. So if you have found yourself searching for answers and you are peering at astrology as a method, a way to look closer at yourself, at your relationships, your career, your family, friends, your relationship with money, your self-worth, all of these are a part of astrology. And it dives into so much detail that it would probably be shocking to some people who've never explored the depths of it, who've maybe simply only looked at sun signs astrology as for fun. And sun sign astrology has kept astrology in the general public, which is great as a doorway to that, but it is so much more than that. And so what I'm going to be covering are a few examples in this first video as ways to answer that question. Why astrology? Do you believe in astrology? And so forth. So stay tuned for the last example, as that I will be going into detail on one area of astrology that I think is great for really setting the foundation to understanding yourself at a broad and deep view and answers more than just why astrology. It really gets into some of the other questions, which I'll be covering in this series. But let's get started and dive right in. Okay, continuing with self-awareness, the first area of focus. Your self-identity, how you are projecting your self-image into the world, is one area to think of, but it's a very broad subject. But if we want to look really close at parts of themselves, we have to look at kind of what we know of ourselves and what we do kind of almost on automatic wherever we are in our life. But there's just kind of, you've shared yourself in the world in a way that you are consciously doing somewhat, but a lot of it is unconscious. So how do we get into deeper self-awareness? Well, one way in astrology is the ascendant, and this is the first house angle of astrology, and it is the point we measure by time and space, basically time, your birth time, and space, the location where you were born on the little spinning rock we called Earth, is your birth moment time. It is your seed, and that birth moment time and place creates the ascendant, which gives us insight as an astrologer that create a chart, how to look at how everything is connected, and it sets the first house. Well, the first house and the ascendant is about your expression into the world. It's also about your life, your vitality of life, your life force. First house, and your first house ruler, very important. So before we get into the technical language of astrology, I want to dive into more about why. So birth time is very important, and sometimes we use a sunrise chart if someone doesn't have a birth time, but the accurate birth time is really, really important for this process. You can get some understanding, but I always encourage finding the accurate birth time. So I'll go into rectification in another video, but at this point, I just want to get that first start of looking for the birth time. And in the comments below, I will share a link for where you can find your birth certificate if you are looking for your birth time. If you have heard from your mother or father, sometimes the memory is not so good, so I still encourage finding the actual birth time certificate. The ascendant as the first house angle of astrology is also something that is important to understand is an evolving awareness. You as a 6 or 7-year-old and have an essence to who you are, but over time and life experiences will shape who you are and how you project that into the world. There's an essence to your personality, but what you really express out has a lot to do with how you're conditioned. So you may define yourself one way in your early years, and you compare yourself maybe to your friends and other people in your family, religious upbringing, your culture, just all of those things of your early environment. But you may think, well, in my adult life, I'm set in stone and this is what it is. But truly, you are evolving. And if you're asking big questions and looking into astrology, that is important to keep in mind. You are evolving. So you have the potential to heal or, reach for something that seems a little bit beyond your comfort zone, and your self-awareness and expressing yourself, it really kind of puts you in that place of growing. And that's why we're looking at this. Perhaps more, I guess on the other side of the coin is the part of the self that we don't pay attention to because it's in the unconscious mind. It's experiences that we've pushed down or suppressed because we couldn't express them, maybe our early life and how we started understanding ourselves wasn't accepted in our family circle, and then we suppressed that expression until we became adults and could be more of who we really are authentically. So self-awareness acknowledges what we know we are, and we own it, and we're expressing it and living it. But there is a growth process of the deeper self-awareness, acknowledging the parts of ourselves that we live and know and we don't want to share, or that we hope to share, but we're not comfortable with that. Perhaps we've suppressed experiences that we feel guilty of or shamed. And we're reaching to understand what those are, what those experience framed for us. Maybe we disassociated from parts of ourselves in order to live through an experience. These are all a part of self-awareness, and all of these parts of ourselves that are buried deep in our unconscious mind are part of the exploration of self-awareness, and astrology can really help get to so much of that information. It's almost like buried treasure. When you courageously take steps forward toward bringing parts of yourself that have been unloved into your conscious awareness, and when you do the digging, you'll be going through emotional process. So there will be feeling it again, thinking of it. You may feel, you could go through a spectrum of emotional response to going in that digging in that place of where these buried feelings are, or these experiences or parts of yourself that you haven't been able to express. It does take an act of courage. You have to be brave to do it. But the payoff, the outcome, is a more compassionate relationship with yourself. And with that, you will find a new serenity. I bring this to you as 10 years ago, as I was diving into my own personal journey, and how I even came to astrology was for that very reason, to get into the parts of my life that were really traumatic experiences, and I had to work through them slowly but surely. And astrology was a tool that helped me do it. So it really helps to, find those parts of the selves, bring them forward, go through the emotional process, go through the grieving, go through and you may need to make sure you're working with a counselor, because in astrology, as a student, you may bring up parts of these experiences and really need to work with someone on that. So I encourage that. I did that as well. I worked with many astrologers who are also counselors, and I also worked with counselors who weren't astrologers, so on different topics and different subjects in different areas. So you really need to be aware of that, because you will land on some very sensitive details for yourself. And to heal them, it takes work. That's why they call it inner work. And it's something that if you're doing it, I encourage having a journal, keeping a journal, or writing emails to yourself so you can kind of keep track. And you may find yourself having dreams that also will help you along the way. And I will share more on that later. So you may ask, well, how do you get to unconscious parts of the self? I mean, really, it's unconscious. So, well, there is more than one way, of course, to get there, and you can look to your astrology, but also you can get there with a counselor, but a counselor will go through different pieces of getting to understand your experience, lived experience, and then we'll dive into each of those subject areas for healing. So I've experienced all of those, but I found astrology had a unique and very precise and concise way of getting into that, to increase my self-awareness and to acknowledge certain things, and to be a guide for me during that process. And I'll cover more of that in future videos as well. A counselor can help you navigate through a lot of material that just an astrologer isn't skilled to do so. So I encourage to make sure you have that support when you're in process. Now, astrology, when used as a self-awareness tool, you will land on these experiences. There's a range of traumatic experiences, and some people carry over PTSD and so forth from their experiences. And so I really encourage that you are working with a counselor as a part of your self-awareness journey if you are a trauma survivor, okay? So I wanna just make sure of that. And there is nothing more valuable that you can do and give yourself than that, okay? I know that a lot of individuals who are seeking counseling are concerned about the cost of it, but sometimes you can get that through your employer, but you can also get through a community service as well. And I will in the comments below add some links that might be useful to you in that process, okay? So for self-awareness, just to kind of close up the detail on self-awareness, it is really about getting into certain areas that have blocked you from fully acknowledging who you are, even the area, and being able to actually language and speak to and voice your personal experience with close friends, with family members that have a respectful relationship with you, because a lot of our early trauma in life comes from family members. So it's really a tricky thing to navigate, but it's so empowering to work through those and find new levels of just where you're giving love to yourself in each of these phases. So self-awareness is back in 2010, just to give you a little tiny history, a personal history on this self-awareness. I had started coming up against the background of my childhood abuse when I had right after I had my daughter. And in that, when I was kind of asking big questions of what do I want to give my daughter, what kind of belief system do I want to shape for my structure that I want to give to my daughter, and these questions that I was asking then really forced me to look at my own background and where I stood in my belief systems and my value systems. And so then that just, each question took me a little deeper and a little deeper, and just it can bring up a spiritual crisis. And I really had to move through some really tough things. But interesting, when I asked the question, the dreams came that then invited me into astrology, kind of let me know that here's something for you, Sarah, pay attention. And sure enough, that's exactly where I found the support that I needed to go through a lot of details of my history to start that long journey of healing. And I think healing is an ongoing thing when you have really, really traumatic experience in your early life, because it's so much in the psyche. And it takes a lot, because it can come even when you're happy and settled in adult life to a certain level, and then you get to a certain level and then something else can turn on that you have to address and look at. So it's an ongoing, but there are what I call the grades. I mean, there's levels of things that you become more attuned to, and how you can live a higher quality of life because you have healed things and they don't come up the same way. They can still come up, but they are not as loud and not as emotional in response, and you don't respond to them in the same way, and you can navigate a lot with an easier flow with life. And I think I would give that, I would love to be able to show that and give that and point the direction to others for that as well. Another area of astrology that I wouldn't necessarily put it in astrology. I would put it as a theme that happens also with astrology. When you are exploring and studying astrology, synchronicity can really be emphasized in your life. You will see how things will happen at certain points and how it all kind of comes together when the planets are moving through a particular transit. And so there's something very powerful about synchronicity and how that helps you along the way. And when you marry astrology and the awareness with the synchronicity of life, then I think it's a supporting thing. It's almost like you're getting the feedback from your relationship to everything. And it's a real eye-opener for how it kind of just brings things forward in your consciousness. And then you're tuning into it, and you are able to then make new connections in your experience, in your consciousness. So for example, a particular transit or a planet that is, I guess you would also add that into planetary transits, will open up something that maybe you have been working on, and all of a sudden it just kind of opens up for you. So for example, back in 2014, when I turned on my website for sharing astrology in a bigger way, and I for my newsletter, and then starting to do some classes online. At the same time, it's kind of like things happen like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But new relationship entered my life, and I could really see it in the astrology. So there was kind of like this, oh, I see it, and there it is, and there's the person. So I really had a real, wow, this really is working in a way, it feels almost magical, but it's just kind of like you begin to understand the symbolism and the archetypes and the potentials. And I think that helps in the process of healing. It's like, okay, now that you've healed this, the universe is almost saying, now that you've healed this, Sarah, here's another thing for you to look at. And so it kind of opens up an opportunity to receive love, give love in a relationship, and it goes from there. So I have that experience. I don't want to get too personal in this, but I just want to touch on the kind of the magical sense that synchronicity gives you when you're in that process. And astrology, when you have astrology, you almost have a way of looking at the clock of the transits to kind of see the potentials for that as well. And it can go both ways. We can see the positive things and the things that would be challenging as well. You can see both. But I think the synchronicity is there for if you're starting a journey of healing, you might see that and you might experience that in your life, and it will it'll help be a guide for you as well. Another area of the value of astrology as a parent. I'm a parent, I have a daughter, and during my first few years of studying astrology, I really tuned in to my daughter's astrology, and it helped me understand a lot more that she might not express with me verbally, but it kind of helped me understand how I, as a mother, I could help her and support her in deeper ways that she might not have been able to language with me otherwise. And so I find that it is an excellent tool to add to other things that I have found through my journey of trying to better understand myself and better understand other people and my relationships, my love relationships, because I wanted to make sure that I had a higher quality of life, especially given the beginnings of my life. I wanted to, improve by healing and being more self-aware. And astrology has helped me do that, but also things like the 5 Languages of Love book, I think by Gary, can't remember his last name, but I'll put a link to that below. I share these with the clients that come to me for readings as well, but that's another reason why astrology, because it helps us see into things that may not be able to be verbally expressed, especially for a parent. It gives you some insights that are helpful. I am cautious to having too much astrology that given for a child with a parent to some degree, because there's a balance. So I am mindful of that, because there is something to be said about just the relationship developing over time and the child having that that freedom to grow in that kind of sacred place, So there's always that measuring how much astrology for a child, so they have that. So I'm conscious of that and mindful of that. Another area of astrology, why astrology, is life planning. I met my now husband, in 2014, and we became engaged a year later, but I wanted to work. One of my stipulations for getting married was to elect a time. And so I worked with an astrologer who I'm fond of and respect highly for her work to help me elect that time. And so I just wanted to use that as, because it's part of something that's important to me. So for life planning, big events such as getting married would be one. And the other is you can use it as for perhaps buying a house or making a big purchase like that you're committed to over a very long period of time. Or even just, the big money things that we invest in, such as improving our home or whatnot, or college. So life planning, and when is a good time for, I want to do that thing, and how is it supported? Or is this not the best time to do that? I mean, of course, there are certain things in life where you could just do that without astrology, but astrology helps you see potential, caution signs on the road ahead if you weren't paying attention. So it's really excellent to consider, how astrology is used for life planning. And another area of astrology, which I am not practicing at this point, but I am happily referring to other astrologers, is horary. Now, it's not necessarily life planning, because electional is more the life planning, like when to start my business, but horary is more supporting as a divination tool, and it helps in how to find something, how to understand the situation of like a pet being lost, or all of these sorts of things. So horary is really valuable, and I'm excited to maybe study that in the next year. But it's another one to consider. Mindfulness is my last area of focus here, and I really think it's important as part of the answer to the question, why astrology? And when I started my adult life and I went into the public world and started my career, I was not thinking a lot about spirituality. I'd grown up in religion, and I had some bad experience with organized religion. Get into that later. But mindfulness came to me around my Saturn return, which is around age 27 to 30. And really, it was my first dip in to why I would land on this later in my late 30s and early 40s. But it's really about spiritual growth and for soulful life, living with purpose and evolving given all the bigger picture. And so astrology helps me do that. Astrology, in my study of it, in my practice of it, and my sharing it with others in my practice, is all about that. It is about being mindful. What is the energy of the moment, or what we're moving through or navigating through? And this is such a big part of astrology. Now, even when you're when you're studying astrology, even when you're practicing astrology, you'll wonder about a particular transit that's coming, and it might looks really, full of danger signs, and you won't always have the full awareness of exactly what it is, but you can be mindful, like, okay, that is coming. What is that? And you won't always have the answer. It will manifest, and then you'll be like, aha, okay, I see. Oh, and then there's kind of like this, because of the experience, then you can see how it's operating with you as an archetype. And there are parts of life that we don't have control over. And this is also part of the mindfulness of astrology, that I think is important, and why I really appreciate the serenity prayer. Use it and say it often, because there are parts of life you cannot change, and you are just a part of it, and you are part of a generational storyline that's going on in the collective and evolving, and you can't change that. You can change your relationship to it. You can change how you perceive it and how you will help evolve that, but you're part of a bigger story. But there's also the part of the spirituality process. It's just kind of a daily thing, and it's a part of it kind of encompasses, or it also involves in the themes, the healing and self-awareness, and life planning. So they kind of all come together with mindfulness in a way, in a unique way. So it's mindfulness is throughout the threads is what I'm trying to say. Okay, so the part that I wanted to bring to you, the nugget of this, why astrology, is about evolutionary astrology and the lunar nodes of the moon that are in the birth chart, along with Pluto. Why those two? Well, the lunar nodes, and I will do a technical video on this later. Right now, I just want you to understand that evolutionary astrology, through diving into the delineation of astrology, looking at it through the lens of evolutionary astrology, is really incredible for getting into the areas of why your soul's here, what it hopes to evolve through experience. And the important part of that is what you will evolve or try to evolve or have a breakthrough through experience. So it kind of addresses the arc of the life, or arc of the life, however which way that's going to show up on the video. So, and you can look at kind of, okay, if you were trying to boil it all down to a nugget, the arc of the life is so important of what is kind of the seed potential. But healing is so important as a part of that discovery. And to heal one thing helps you achieve a higher potential of your birth chart. So if you approach the birth chart with, I'm not going to change, I'm stuck in my ways, or I don't see how we really, how that works. And it gets into also like the free will or fate question, and I'll dive into that later. But what I love about evolutionary astrology is that it is a great foundation for anyone who has experienced trauma or is trying to navigate their spiritual life and understand themselves deeper self-awareness, higher consciousness, how to, learn about themselves in a way that guides them towards their soulful purpose-filled life. And a part of that is understanding yourself in relationship to the whole. So the Pluto part of that story is, in evolutionary astrology, we are looking at Pluto not only as a generational thing, but it is in a particular sign and house, and it's connected in relationship to the planets that speaks to something about the base of why your soul incarnated anyway, this life, the parents that you have, and so forth. So Pluto has this really deep perspective, but it takes a lot to maybe look at the layers of that. And of course, evolutionary astrology helps you do that. So with this powerful gift of astrology, you can look at the bigger picture of your life, but also get into the details of life experiences that you can work through, heal, transform, and then move to broader, authentic expression of yourself. When you subscribe to my newsletter, you will also get my Venus Gifts Guide, which I've created that will be helpful in exploring what you need to feel valued and to know love. In experiencing giving it to yourself, how that fills up your cup, and then from that it overflows, and how that then love is mirrored back to you. So when you focus on your time in self-awareness, healing, and personal growth, you will open these new paths of life you've desired, and ultimately the outcomes of that work, the inner work as we call it, will enhance the quality of your life. For the past 6 years, I've been sharing these astrology subjects and themes on my blog, and now I'm sharing it on YouTube. And so I really appreciate the opportunity to share this with you. If you're interested in astrology reading, you can find the link below to schedule a reading with me. And I know a lot of people are moving through difficult times and crises right now. And so I have a special offering for the budget, for a budget constrained budget. And this offering is just to get you started if you need it at this time, and for 2020 and through the spring of 2021. So please join me here on my channel, subscribe to my channel, click the bell if you want to be notified when I post new videos. I'm going to try to do this weekly, but I'm doing my astrology practice very part-time, so we'll see how that goes. And I'm grateful for you, so thank you so much if you've made it this far in my sharing. And my next videos will be the big question of who am I and why am I here? And the fourth one in the series will be fate or free will, a very significant question which may take several weeks or longer to answer based on a lot of things that you look at. So be sure to watch and take notes for your own astrology musings and your personal growth and healing. And thank you again. Until next time, have a wonderful day.